Are you a diesel mechanic, or you're just not quite sure the tools that you're going to need to work on some of these diesels? Well, I got a list for you that's going to help you out. Nuts Multiple Tone here, guys. I have compiled a list of my top tools to work on today's diesels, whether you're working on Power Strokes, Duramax, Cummins, or Sprinters. Yeah, Sprinters. There's a lot of them on the road, and you might want to work on it because there's a lot of money to be made on Sprinters. Let's get going. All the tools that I've listed in this video are linked down below, and they're also in my Amazon store. So go check them out. So for diesel tools, I think that the number one tool you're going to need is this right here. There are so many 6 liters on the road, and you're going to have to be testing so many of them for the most common thing that I see a 6 liter for, and that is a high pressure oil issue. So I don't have this kit. I have a kit that just has these two fittings here. This fitting here is for if you wanted to remove the IPR and air check it through the IPR hole. I would only do that if I had an E-Series van where I could easily remove the IPR. The simplest way is when you have a new style 6 liter where your ICP sensor is at the front of the passenger valve cover, and you're going to remove it and you're going to put in the fitting here and you're going to apply air. The only difference with that is then you have to command the IPR closed. The other fitting is for, if you're not familiar, the other fitting is for the early style 6 liters where the ICP is on the back of the high pressure oil pump cover. And the way you test that one is you have to remove the passenger valve cover, and there's a plug in the oil rail that you remove, and you screw the adapter in and you air check it that way. Those are a little bit different because it has a log for an oil rail. It doesn't have a big fat wavy rail with a standpipe and dummy plug. So it doesn't have as many issues. You still can have top injector O-ring leaks and leaks with the high pressure lines and STC fitting and things like that. So this is my number one tool right here for diesels. This is $12 for this set here. You can get other sets that come with an IPR socket. This is the set that I choose right here. So there's an IPR. There's one with an IPR socket. I don't recommend that because I'm going to recommend a reputable IPR socket here in a little bit. But that comes with O-rings and a filter for your IPR. But I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't use aftermarket stuff for things like that. So there we go. $12 going to get you on your way with the 6 liters for testing them for high pressure oil issues. The next tool that you're going to need for a 6 liter is this is for the nipple cups on the wavy rails. This is for the newer 6 liters, the newer style, where it has the big oil rail and it has standpipes and dummy plugs. And it's going to have a nipple cup with an O-ring in there. I'm not certain if the log style has that. I can't remember. I haven't done a log style. I haven't messed with an early 6 liter in quite some time. So $75. I would recommend you get this from a reputable company because I've seen shops try to remove the nipple cups with a cheap aftermarket socket, and it did not work. So this is not imperative, but it's a good tool to have. This is the one that I bought. The next one that you're going to need is 6 liters also suffer from fuel pump issues. And so as you can see right here, right on the fuel filter housing, right next to the fuel pressure regulator, you can remove a port and you can install this test adapter. And then you can install a fuel pump test right here. You can go right in with a Ford adapter, and you can test fuel pressure there. There is an easier way to do it. I've never done it this way, and I'm not even certain how good. This is the actual test adapter I have. I actually generally go and test it at the fuel pump just because this is kind of a pain in the butt, but it's a good thing to have. The next one is this. Now, I've seen people do this. I don't know how this brand is, but you can get a fuel filter cap, and you can put a fitting on there. Now, if this was your truck, maybe you want to do this and just have the test adapter on there so you can just throw a gauge on there if you need to. But fuel pumps are something that 6-liters suffer from, and they can still run with a bad fuel pump. The last one I had, it was on a flatbed 6-liter, and it came in and it was running rough, and I had misfires that were moving all over the place. They were over here, then they were over there, and it took me a while. This one threw me for a loop, and it ended up being a bad fuel pump. So, but I have seen that, so this is an option. Now this right here, you're going to need this if you work on 6-liters because you're going to have to remove that glow plug harness. Now there's many companies that make these. I like the Lyle one because it's stronger. The cheaper ones, they tend to bend right here and get distorted and not work. So this is for pulling the connectors out of the head where you have a plug and the plug goes into the head and it has the connector that goes on the glow plug. So you're going to need that to remove it. Now, a long time ago, before I had this tool, I took one of the old wrenches that came with like a die grinder, and I found one that had a similar size as this opening here, and I went ahead and bent it open, and I bent it, and it worked kind of. I mean, I didn't have this tool, so I had to find something that would work. So good tool right there, and Lyle will never let you down. The next tool, now this fits 6.0s and 7.3s. So on the 6.0s, on the fitting at the back of the high pressure pump, they have a quick connect fitting. You're going to need to disconnect that if you're messing with your high pressure pump. Then on the 7.3s, you're going to have a disconnect at where your oil lines connect to the head and where they also connect to the high pressure pump. So you're going to need to disconnect those. This is the set that I have. It covers a 6-liter and a 7.3. So good tool to have. And I will have all these tools linked down below. The next one. This is a luxury tool. You don't need this one. I honestly don't use it. I don't even have this. I mean, it's only $17. If I hadn't have done so many messed with so many injector connectors, then I probably would have bought this a long time ago. But basically, your injector connectors, they snap up into the head, and then your outside harness clips onto the connector. Well, this is to remove those locking tabs. What I do is, and I've seen guys say not to do this, I've never had an issue, I take a little ball peen hammer, and I just tap the connector, and I can get it to pop into the head. Other guys use a socket. You can use a socket to disconnect it. I'm not sure what size. I haven't done one since I saw the video where a guy showed doing a socket. But maybe it's like a 7/8. I'm not sure. You can do it with a socket. I just have never done it. I use a hammer. The next tool, now this is what I was talking about earlier. You're going to want an IPR socket. Now this works for Fords and Internationals, as the Ford is an international engine. So if you work on big trucks, you can use this socket as well. So I like the Lyle one. It works great. Now this is a tool that is, if you work on 6.4s, you're going to want this tool. So at the back of the turbo, I'm at the front of the truck, and here's the turbo, and you have the two up pipes that come on like this. Well, you got a bolt that's on this side, on the driver's side, that's really hard to get to because of a bracket. And this is the socket. I bought this a long time ago from Snap-on. I've seen guys say that their sockets broke. I personally have never had any issues. I've used my same socket for quite some time. So this is a Snap-on tool. I've never seen it from anyone else. But time is money. And if you can use a socket and make things easier, why not do it? I know I do. Now the next one, now these next two are also Snap-ons. Now I recently got these sockets. The 8 milli I had for a little while. Diesel Tech Chris from TikTok actually showed these tools, and I actually bought this one. And I made a Tones Tools Tuesday, and he actually messaged me and said, "Hey man, you should get the 10 milli also." I believe that one works for the 6.7s. I can't remember vice versa. I haven't even worked in 4 months, so I haven't even touched a diesel in a while. But anyways, so you got the 8 milli here, and you got the 10 milli. So this is an extra long quarter drive wobble socket for glow plugs. I guess it's technically not for glow plugs, but I mean, if you look down here, the 8 milli actually specifically says glow plugs. Removes and installs glow plugs on the following vehicles, 6.7s. So, next up we have, now I actually fought with many trucks before I bought this tool. So if you work on Fords, you lift the cabs, and this doesn't necessarily doesn't go for just diesels. I had F-150. I was replacing turbos. I lifted the cab. Well, you have this coupler. It's not called a coupler, but it's like a long sleeve like this, and your parking brake cable from the rear comes up and it slides in, and the one from the front comes up and it slides in. Well, they're locked in by this little pin that has been pushed in. So the way I've always done it is I took a drill bit and I would drill out that pin so I can slide the cable out to lift the cab. Well, they make this tool to grab the cable and pull it out without having to drill that pin. Now, for me, that's money because I've spent a lot of time. And the last cab I pulled, actually, I will say that I fought with that parking brake cable for quite some time. So I bought this set here. I honestly can't wait to use it. I've seen a ton of videos about it. So and that works for diesels and gas, for Fords, just lifting the cab on Fords. Now, if you work on diesels, you work on 7.3s. And 7.3s have an issue where the injector cups fail and it leaks fuel into the coolant and it makes a hot mess. I've made a couple videos on this. Now, there is another option besides this. So my first kit that I bought was just like this. I think the screw bolt and the nut here were larger than this one. I can't find that set. And then the installer did not have an O-ring. So my first set was beefy removal, but the installer sucked. What it does is you put this down into your injector cup, and this right here sits above the injector bore. And you run your tap down until you hit the sleeve, and then you tighten it down about 2 or 3 turns to get a good bite, and then you turn the nut, and the nut pulls this up, and it forces it off of this. So it puts pressure on here, and it pulls the cup up this way. So that's how you remove it. Now, a little tip, and I got this from one of my subscribers, is I used to put a dab of grease in the bottom of the injector hole to catch any shavings. And I had one where it took me a real long time to get enough grease in the back hole on number 8. And someone told me, hey man, just drop a penny down the hole. A penny will block the hole. It'll catch all the shavings. Ever since then, I use that penny method. It works fantastic. So some of these kits they sell where they have a little plug that you can put in the tip. Good luck with that. You're going down a blind hole way far and you got to get that in there. So just drop a penny in there. Now, the other option besides this is to go to Riff Raff Diesel. And I can't remember how much they charge. Maybe it's like $100, 75. I can't remember how much they charge. But they actually have the best remover and installer for injector cups. If you work on diesels all the time, then that's probably the option that you would want to go and buy that set. It's expensive instead of renting it. So what it does is instead of just pivoting on the top of the injector bore, it actually has a plate with a hole here and a hole here, and you tighten down the remover with the glow plug with the injector hold down bolts. Well, it has its own bolts, but you use the holes. And then for the for the installer, it's the same principle. It has an O-ring here. So you apply your Loctite to your cup. You put it on the tool. You put it in the hole. You line it up with the bolts, and you tighten it down. Once you've hit bottom, it gives you a torque spec to torque it to, and then you know you've put your sleeve in far enough with no issues. So that's a little pricey that way. The last one I did stainless steel cups from Riff Raff, and I used the tool. So it worked great, and for reliability and for the fact that you hope that you did it right with this, where you're putting the sleeve on here and you're setting it down in the bottom of the hole and you're hitting this tool with a hammer, it's very difficult over by the heater box. So it's doable. I've done it many times. The next tool, I didn't even actually own this tool for a long time. I just used rags and picks and screwdrivers and whatever. But this is a bore brush for cleaning the injector bores. And this works on the 7.3s, the 6 liters, the 6.4s, and the 6.7s. So definitely a tool you want to get. And you can get it. You can get a kit. If you look on Amazon, you can get a kit that has this. It has a bore brush and it has injector cups. But I'll tell you what, if you've ever done an injector cup-ish job and you had to remove the starter to drain the block and flush the block and replace all the rubber hoses, and you did all of that to hope that the sleeves you got were good quality and they were going to hold up and not put fuel back in your cooling system, it's not a chance I would want to take. I definitely would not do that on my truck. Definitely not a customer's truck. The next tool, you don't need this tool. I actually don't own this tool. I've never done it with this tool, but I know it's simple. For the 6.4s, the connector on the injectors. It can be a bugger to disconnect. I honestly just use a pocket screwdriver and I can get it to pop loose. This is a tool made by CTA Tools for popping that connector off. Easy peasy. These guys are awesome. It's an American make. It's an American company. They have a lifetime warranty on their tools, and they have some awesome tools. I think I shared about 3 or 4 shorts now of my visit to their booth at SEMA. They have an awesome oil seal removal and installer for the 6.7s. Oh my God, it's awesome. It's expensive, but it's awesome. Next up is not necessarily a diesel tool, but if you don't own one of these and you work on diesels, or if you work on hybrids, well, really, if you work on anything, I think you're foolish to not have a vacuum refiller, because it just fills the cooling system without any headaches and without any issues. I personally use my airlift. I actually have this one. I've had it for a lot of years. I'm not even going to say how long, 14 years, something like that, a long, long time. And it's amazing. I use it on everything. And I have only had a few cars that I had an air pocket in a heater hose, but generally not. But if you work on diesels, you definitely want this so you don't get air in your EGR coolers. And if you work on hybrids, you definitely need this. Now, this is a tool. I own these. I actually own the SP tool version. I couldn't find that one. But basically what this is it's a 17 millimeter wrench. It's a 17 millimeter line socket, and you can see it's 12 point. So you can get it on in many different positions. And they have a short one with the drive on the side, and then they have a longer one where the drive is on the end. So there's times where you could use this one. There's times where you could use this one. Do you need it? Not necessarily. I have them. I don't necessarily use them all the time. I will show you a tool that you will use all the time. Now, another option is this. So Lyle Tools has this flare nut socket set, and this is for line. This is like a line wrench tool with a socket. You can get this tool here, and it will have the socket you need, but it will only have one, and it will only be in one orientation, whereas this one has its 12 point, first of all, and you can put it in many different orientations on the vehicle. So Lyle Tools, I mean, you can't go wrong, and they're cornering it with the diesel tools, as you can see. Now the next tool, I'll tell you what, if you work on diesels and you've never come across this, let me tell you about a diesel. So a diesel works like this. You have a high pressure fuel system, but it operates on low volume, meaning there's very little fuel in the rails to supply the fuel system if there's a problem. So I've had this happen on a Sprinter. I had a Sprinter that took me for a loop. I had a 2.7, came in, towed in. it had, I think I got it running one time, but it had metal in the fuel, metal in the oil. Guy wanted a new engine. I put a rebuilt motor in it. I get all done. It won't run. I'm chasing my tail, chasing my tail, chasing my tail. Last thing I thought was that an injector was bad. Turned out that I got a kit, and I'll show you this later, of a kit that I got for 30 bucks. I used this kit and found the problem. Basically, what it is like this. Since you have a low volume of fuel, all it takes is for one injector to have a problem, to be leaking, and you'll have a no start because all the fuel from the rail is leaking down that one cylinder. I had this happen on a Sprinter, and I had it happen on a 5.9 Cummins. I had a Cummins that I walked into from a previous foreman, and it was all taken apart. It took me 6 months to get this truck running because I was busy, and every chance I got, I would go work on it, and I would find something else that either he missed, he left loose. I would charge the batteries. I would go to charge it. There'd be a fuel line leaking, tighten it up, and then I'd get pulled off for 3 weeks, and then back to it, and then away. And my manager at the time gave me standard fuel injectors. I put them in and ended up with a no start, and it was all because of one injector was bad. Well, the way that you find that is what you do is on the 5.9, I did this on the 5.9, you pick a line. So I started at the back and I took off number 6 and I screwed on one of these plugs and I tightened it down. So now number 6 is not connected to the fuel rail. I back probed the fuel rail pressure sensor, and the minute I turned the key on, voltage would go away, indicating there was no pressure. So then I go to the next one. So I went to number 5, same thing. And I just left the caps on because all I'm trying to do is find the leak. Then I went to number 4 and I capped it off, and my voltage stayed and I had pressure. So then I went back and I put number 5 back on and number 6 back on. Never lost pressure, replaced that number 4 injector, everything was fixed. Now this actually works for, this works for, they're saying it works for 03 to 22 Cummins, 01 to 22 Duramax, and 08 to 22 Fords. I didn't realize that they all had the same size threads. But anyways, that's what you need right there. I don't have this set. Lyle didn't have this set when I got mine back in the day. So definitely a tool you want to use. And actually, it works on NPRs as well, because an old acquaintance of mine came and borrowed mine to figure out a problem with an NPR. So definitely a tool that you want to have. Now the next step is, I don't work on very many Duramaxes, very few, but I have done some water pumps, and when I did, I used the Lyle kit. So a Duramax, you have to lock the flywheel down with these tools, and then you have this for the crankshaft to take the balancer pulley, the balancer off. And so you need a kit like this. Now that stuff is torqued incredibly, incredibly high. So definitely do not buy a cheap Duramax water pump toolkit, or you will be hurting when you break your tools. Next up, I saw a coworker of mine had one of these, and I asked him what it was. And my friend Stazeni had one, and he showed it on Instagram. And I thought to myself, I don't even think I even said anything out loud, but in my head I thought, who needs a cap for an oil filter on a Cummins? Because I've never had one, I've never needed one, and I've always been able to fish the filter all the way out the bottom. Well, then one day I was doing I don't remember if it was a cab chassis or what. I can't remember the dedication that it takes, or the designation that it is for this style. But one of them, the oil filter is above a cross member. So you can't bring the oil filter straight down. You actually have to go through the passenger wheel well. And if you don't have one of these, then you're going to be making a huge oil mess. So what I do is I put a plastic bag. The filters always come in a plastic bag. So I put a plastic bag around the filter, spin the filter down, and then I put this cap on the top of the oil filter. And then as I tip it, there's always a little bit of oil. And then as I tip it, that oil goes in the bag. I don't make a big fat mess. I throw the bag away, clean my tool off, and put a new filter. So that is kind of funny. I like it when stuff like that happens. when you think something like, haha, why would somebody want a tool like that? And then one day you're wishing that you had it. Luckily, I had a coworker that had one, and I borrowed it, and then I bought it the next day. The next tool it's a tool set. Now, if you work on diesels, you definitely want this set right here. So there's nothing more tedious than disconnecting fuel injector, high pressure fuel lines from injectors, main lines, things like that, because they're always in awkward positions due to everything else on the engine. On the 6.7s and Sprinters, you have a little tiny return nipple that sticks up. That's plastic. You don't want to break it. So it's very difficult to get in there. So I use these for fuel injector lines all the time. These work great. Now, what I like about this set is it goes from 6 all the way to 24. You're not going to find a set like that. I actually saw a set of these at Harbor Freight, and they were Icon. And it was only like 7 in the set, and it was pretty expensive for only being 7. It was like 7 or 8. There wasn't very many. So Capri Tools definitely is what you want to get. And what this is you got one end that, let's see if I can find a picture. Here we go. All right. So you got one end that has a 60-degree angle, and you got another end that has a 30-degree angle. So the first time I ever saw these was Snap-on, and I bought a set, and it only came with 5. And unfortunately, the 5 that I got didn't cover the lines that diesels have. They were all the wrong size. So Snap-on's pitch to me was between both ends and flipping it over, you can cover most of the angles by just having this one wrench. So I strongly recommend that. Capri Tools, they make good quality tools and they have a great warranty. Now this is the tool I was talking about. So what you would do is, I've had a Duramax that had an issue, and the Sprinter. So with the Sprinter, what you do is you take these right here, and you're going to take 5 of them. If you have the 2.7, you're going to take 5, and you're going to take out your return nipple. So you're going to come across the top of your injectors, and you're going to pull all your clips out for your return line. You're going to pop all your return lines out and then pinch off the return line, because it's going to just dump fuel everywhere. Then what you do is you take these and you're going to take this end and you're going to put it into the top of the injector where all these tubes are sticking straight up. Then what I did was, on the one that I did the engine on, I turned a key on, and one of them went whoop, and it filled all the way to the top. And so I knew that injector was no good. The other times I've done it, I've had some 2.7s that I did. I think I did a YouTube short showing this, and I might have done it with the engine cranking. I can't remember. But either way, what you're doing is you're measuring the amount of fuel that returns. If it returns too much fuel, then there goes all your fuel from the rail, and then you're going to have a no start or drivability issues. But generally a no start is what I found. And then for like the Duramax that I did, that one, what you have is you have this manifold here that has all these. So what I did was I went to the one side of the engine, and I disconnected all the returns, and I connected these to the injectors. And then it graduates into these bottles. And then you measure the amount of fuel that returns through these bottles, and you want them to all be even and very little. If you have one that's a lot, well, then that injector is returning too much fuel, and it's bad. So $30 right here, definitely not a bad tool to have, especially for $30. Now, I bought one of these, and I love it. It's a 4-in-1 water and fuel sensor wrench. So this works on Cummins, it works on Duramaxes, it works on I think just about everything. So basically you have 4 different size wrenches. So this one over here is like a 12 point, and you have a big size and a small size, and then this side's 6 point, and you have a big one and a small one. So you got 4 different water and fuel sensor wrenches that this will fit. So essentially 4 tools in one. Like it says, 4-in-1. It works great. I love it. I use it all the time. Now, if you work on diesels, you're going to be leaning over the hood a lot. And my recommendation is you get a big foam pad. Now, before you throw this foam pad on the top of the engine, let me give you a little tip. Take some rags and shove it in to where your hood latch is on both sides. Because if you don't, then your foam pad here is going to have holes all over it. I have one and it's all jacked up from a lot of the Fords that I'm leaning over on, and it's just punching holes in them. So do that, it'll save you. And then I ended up, the first one I bought was Snap-on. That one's got holes all over it. And so I recently just bought a Lang, and I use this primarily for when I'm on the floor doing window regulators, things like that. Now, I don't have one of these, but I've looked into getting one. This is an adjustable topside creeper. I know guys that live by these, and I know guys that don't. So it's just an option, just letting you know if you've never used one, you can think about it. You can adjust this height so it gets you to the right height that you need, and you can work on it without any trouble. Just an option. But if I was to get one, that would be the one I would get. Next up, if you don't work on eco diesels, you don't need this tool. But if you do work on eco diesels, it's the only diesel that I have had to have a timing kit for. If I could remember correctly, the eco diesel has timing chains, and you got to time it. My very first YouTube video was timing an eco diesel because it was a very confusing procedure. This is the kit that you need right here. Next up, now when we start dealing with the diesels, you got NOx sensors, and the NOx sensors are different sizes than the oxygen sensors. So this is a set from Lyle for NOx sensors to help get them out. Just a 2 set. Now this set right here, so this is the tool that I have for injectors. I've had some 6.7s, I've had some Jeeps, some Sprinters that I couldn't get the injector out. And I had to adapt a slide hammer, so I would find a nut that would fit these threads, and then I would find a nut that would adapt to the top of the injector. I would weld the two together, and I would use this to take them off. I have like 5 in my box that I've welded together to fit different injectors. Had I known about this set, I would have bought this set, because this set comes with all different sizes for all different types of injectors. And then you have like this one here. This one is for sprinters, I believe. So you have all these different types of adapters and you got several different slide hammers. So it looks like you got 3 different slide hammers in here. So definitely a kit to look into. Getting out stuck injectors can be quite a job. And the very last tool. Now, if you work on sprinters, I'll tell you what, if you don't have one of these, you don't necessarily need this 4-pack, but you want the long 3/8, because that fan clutch in the front of that Sprinter, it can be a pain in the butt. But I figured out that with the tight reach and a good cordless ratchet, you can snap that bolt, break it loose, and zip it all the way out with this, reaching right down the front, because you got to pull the fan shroud out. And you don't have a lot of room in there. You can't get your arm in there. And so you can put the tight reach down there, zap the bolt out, and then grab the bolt with a magnet, wiggle the fan clutch off, put it back on, and then zip it back in. So definitely a tool that you want. These wrenches, they come in handy on the front of engines. Another great company. I met them at SEMA as well. They have a lot of cool stuff, a lot of really neat tools to make the job easier. So that is my list of diesel tools that you should have. Now that you've seen this video, I'm sure that you're going to relate to some of these diesel tools if you work on any diesels at all. If you have a tool that I didn't mention, drop a comment down below. I'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell. You get notified of all my future content, which you definitely don't want to miss. See you guys next time.